Hello, everybody, and happy belated Easter. How are you doing today, Claudia?
Hey, I am doing great. And day after Easter, it's certainly not Boxing Day. It must be Basket Day. And let me tell you, there are about 1,000 bunnies running around our backyard. So maybe we're just supposed to let them hop into our basket.
Let the bunnies do whatever they want. This is their day. This is their week.
This is their day. Have their way. Bunnies will have their way.
Exactly. And speaking
what are we
about
talking about today, Conrad?
We have a lot of things to talk about. So I know that you did an interview with the guest curator from Desert X, César García-Alvarez. We'll be talking about that in just a few moments. Sounds like it's going to be an interesting interview.
Definitely.
I also went to see a couple of the different exhibits. We'll be talking about that. And what else do we have? You also went up to Yucca Valley this weekend to look at the sand painting exhibit.
Yes, by Anton Goss. Very interesting person. The paintings are very unique. So we're going to spend a little time with that.
So let's start off by talking about one of the exhibits that at least I know I went to, and I believe you went to also. It's called The Passenger by Eduardo Sarabia, right? You went to that one.
Yes.
Right. That is a very unique location for that exhibit. And I always find it very interesting why they pick certain locations, which I think is what's going to happen. You're going to be talking about in your interview coming up soon. Right.
Yeah.
So
artist selection and site location. Interesting.
And this space or this exhibit is really unique. It's what I would consider to be a maze. And kind of the idea behind it is that there are 4 walls that people travel through when they were coming to different lands, and you didn't know what you were going to see over the next mountainside or over the next wall. And so when you go inside of this maze, you actually work your way through it. And once you get inside, you have the ability to stand up on top of these various levels to overlook the site. And then you can kind of get inside the maze and go through it. It's really kind of a unique experience being inside it.
Yeah, those were some steep plywood steps up there.
They sure were. But once you got up there, we had
some winds that were coming up when we were there, and some of the what do you call it, palapa, I think that interwoven palm was starting to wear away and blow. Kind of, we were doing a little repair job. Eduardo, I hope you're okay with that.
And I think it's interesting that you're not supposed to touch those exhibits, but you can't help it when you're walking by it. And the material is very unique. And so, I found it to be one of the 3 or 4 what I consider to be outstanding exhibits from this year's Desert X.
Right. And where else did you go?
So I also went to see Parapivot.
Oh, right? You got up to Parapivot. Great.
Finally got to that.
Not a windy day, I hope.
Not a windy day, but what a hike to get to that. That was interesting. So be prepared. If our desert folks go to this one, be prepared. It's very steep. When I was sitting there getting ready to go up this hill, I saw a family carrying or pushing 3 babies in a baby carriage that didn't even get up the first part of the hill. They just backed up and said, forget it. Yeah. Exactly. And I also saw another person who was pushing somebody in a wheelchair, and they made it all the way to the top. So, more power. Yes, it was amazing.
That's interesting.
But once you get there and you work your way around that hill and you get to the top, quite an amazing structure that's there. And Robert and I were talking about, it is probably one of the few exhibits right now that I think can just be picked up and put somewhere here in the desert in front of a building or in front of a library or in a park. It's just so beautiful, that design. The idea is get yourself through the maze until you finally find the spot that you want to be at. It's actually not too big, so you won't really get lost in the maze. But you do get the idea of how the walls are on each side of you, and you don't really know where you're going. Especially like some of the pioneers when they first came down through various mountains, like the mountains here in the Coachella Valley. You don't know what's over the next mountain until you actually go through it. The same idea. And we can kind of
again, one of the beauties of going to these exhibits is you get to interpret it as you want. So let's just say here I am. I'm trying to decide which turn I'm going to go. If I go to the left, do I go towards California? If I go to the right, do I go towards Nevada? Who knows? But you got to make a decision and then go for it. Let's go this way. And well, let's go this way. Ah, I see the light.
Let's kind of move forward to my interview with César García-Alvarez, the co-curator, and
Yes.
he's very interesting, of course, very well versed, but we talk about not only the artist selection, but the site selection, along with new artists and site-specific, their works coming up. Which will be coming up April 9th. Just a few new ones, but it's a nice addition. And also about the new Desert X documentary that's coming out. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, let's just take a listen right now.
Okay.
Well, continuing with our coverage of Desert X 2021, I'm really happy to be here today with the new co-curator of Desert X, César García-Alvarez. César, how are you doing?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great back in the desert.
It sounds like your plate is full. So maybe you could tell us a little about your background, how you joined the team, and what you've been working on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. So I'm based in Los Angeles, where I founded and run a nonprofit space called The Mistake Room. And in about mid to late 2019, Neville Wakefield, who's the artistic director of Desert X, approached me, and we had a conversation about the possibility of me joining him as the curator for the third iteration of the show here in the Coachella Valley. And to be quite frank, it was sort of an odd, I think, conversation at first, because my relationship to histories of land art, it hasn't necessarily been something that I've devoted a lot of my professional time doing, but I have a personal relationship to the Coachella Valley. I grew up in Mexicali, which is very close to here, and I still have family in the East Valley, in India and in Coachella. And growing up as a kid, my family would come and visit my aunts and uncles, and we'd spend time here. But as I got older, I sort of stopped coming. And in many ways, this place always sort of reminded me in a bit of my own sort of family's migrant story, and in many ways our own displacement from the place I grew up in. So it sort of became for me this locale between the place where I grew up in and the place I now live. And doing Desert X from a very kind of from a very personal, I think, interest was also to see if maybe my own relationship to this locale and my own story of this place, could be different than the one I had. And if I could sort of hit a reset button of sorts.
How involved are you as co-curator in the artist selection process? Or what were the first things that kind of came to be for making Desert X 2021 come alive?
Right. So yes, Neville and I collectively, we both have very different professional interests and different personal backgrounds, but I think that's sort of what makes the show really vibrant, is that you have two different voices and perspectives that are having conversations about different ideas and urgencies that we're hearing from artists that we sort of know, or artists that we're doing research in. So the process started off with me and Neville really looking at a wide range of artists, and thinking about who we may be able to sort of invite. And I had some preliminary ideas coming into this, but the first couple of months, I took on the position in late 2019. I wasn't announced until February of 2020. And so what I was doing is I was coming in when people didn't know that I was going to do this, and listening. I had a lot of sort of interest in learning about the local cultural infrastructure, the different institutions, artists that are living here. There's a creative music scene. And to be quite frank, I had ideas of an exhibition that was going to be much more locally rooted, where we were going to have artists coming in to do collaborations with local cultural makers, where we were, going to be able to stage a local exhibition of artists who live here. Those were early conversations. But a few weeks after my appointment, the pandemic started, and the exhibition eventually took a very different shape.
But it does seem that the artists that were selected are much more diverse. Am I right to say that?
Yes, I think that the exhibition, it was my goal and Neville's that it reflected the world we inhabit. And so this, I think one of the things that helped in us really figuring out our artist selection was that we knew that we wanted the exhibition to think about the landscape in a much more expanded way, not just as a natural physical environment, but as a place forged by people and stories and communities that live here.
So does it kind of start with different artists submitting sort of concepts and talking about just what you were saying, like their relationship with the land or the desert and what they feel, or is it sort of like you're picking them and then saying, would you like to be a part of this? And then narrowing it down.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. A little bit of both. The process for artist selection, as curators, Neville and I are always looking at artists globally. That's the nature of my work. I run an institution with an exhibition program, so I do a lot of that research. So on the one hand, it was about looking, seeing what artists we felt could, based on their work and on their past practice, could be interesting participants in this show. And then there was also just a period of just looking and researching artists we didn't know. And then we kind of began to assemble lists and invited some artists to come and do site visits.
So you narrow it down, you sort of have X amount of funding. Is that how it works for X amount of artists, or is there a budget? Like who pays for all this? How does it come to be?
Of course. Well, there's, like every other nonprofit organization, Desert X depends on the generous support of many, private individuals, foundations, corporate sponsors. This year's edition is generously supported as a presenting sponsored by Richard Mille, the Swiss watchmaker, who incredibly creative company, artist driven and creative driven, and then as well as Gucci's another sort of major supporter of us this year. And so, in addition to the many members and donors who help us continue to do this work, and all of that is all of that additional support comes on top of what the board of directors of Desert X provides, and I think that's sort of how the exhibition is funded.
So Cesar, currently there are 12 site installations, 12 artists, 12 different sites, but I understand that there are more coming in a little bit down the road. Can you talk about the artists that are going to be coming in?
Yes.
No one's leaving, right? Just coming in.
No, just coming in. So I think that one of the things that was very important to the show is that normally you expect an exhibition where you have a big opening weekend, everybody comes in, you can see all of it, and it happens in one event. But considering the realities of the moment, considering that we have to, manage, flow of people, be mindful of that, how many people are gathering, we created multiple moments throughout the show so that not the full exhibition would unfold in chapters in many ways, and you'd be able to create different moments for people to be able to come out to the desert. So there's 12 artists in the exhibition. 9 of the pieces are physically up now. 1 is already happening. It's process-based with school children, and that's happening in their homes. And then there's 2 pieces, one by artist Christopher Myers that will be open the weekend of April 9th to the 11th. And then there's a second work by Felipe Baeza that'll open later in April, towards the end of April. And that work is a ceramic mural in downtown Palm Springs that actually will be permanent. So that piece,
where will that be?
It'll be right where the Hyatt is and the West Elm in downtown Palm Springs. It'll be a permanent sort of addition to that development. And it'll be a work that, for example, will open in April, but it has a different timeline than the other ones because it'll stay on for a period of years.
There's talk about a documentary. We have seen the press video, and it's quite, the focus on the artist is quite well done. Tell us a little bit quickly about the documentary.
Yeah, so the idea of how you create an exhibition catalog, normally museum exhibitions will do a book, but Desert X is a very unconventional kind of show. And so our sponsor, Richard Mio, is executive producing and supporting a filmic catalog of our show. So rather than producing a book, this will give audiences an opportunity, or audiences who couldn't travel this year to see it, an opportunity to not just sort of see the pieces, but their stories behind them.
Well, Cesar, thank you so much for your time. I've learned so much. I'm sure our viewers are going to learn so much when they take a listen to what we've been talking about. But thank you for sharing. I have a much better understanding, and I'm sure all of you out there will too. So
thank you for having me.
And much success for Desert X 2021.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Boy, Cesar, what a interesting and passionate individual he is. This is perfect for him.
Oh yeah, every Desert X now has a guest curator that Neville Wakefield sort of develops a relationship and kind of, he chooses, or they have a symbiosis and work together on all of this. So it's pretty cool. And he's very knowledgeable because he has, he spent a lot of time out here.
So Claudia, you actually went to see this exhibit. I've only seen it in a book. So I have this question for you. Is the painting thick with sand in it? Is it a dimensional painting, or is it, a flat paint?
Not really dimensional. Sand is in it, obviously, but there's some use of interesting graphics kind of superimposed. Some of them are kind of like a photograph that's been obviously morphed, and sort of changed. You'll see the figure, like Strength is a Native American kind of chief or something,
like a headdress.
And got some graphic images. So they're really interesting.
Wow.
And they all sort of evoke a different kind of feeling. A Topanga lion is massive, and it's just like you're drawn right into it. So let's have a look at what we saw.
Claudia, I'm glad that you saw that. There was a nice photograph of one of his paintings in the Desert X book.
Yes.
And I can't wait to actually go see it in person. So that was good that you got up there.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And it is located, it's associated with a business, right? What is that business?
Actually hosted by Acme 5 Lifestyle. And they're really interesting because I really never paid them a visit before. They're relatively new-ish. It's home decor, indoor, outdoor, for your back patio, pots, beautiful things. But it all has a very common thread. It's kind of a boho feel. They also represent interesting artists and jewelers up in the high desert. It's really a beautiful shop, very well curated.
Well, we wish everybody a great week during this, what seems like summer these days. Would you agree?
Yeah. And we've got there's an upcoming event this weekend, which is a Desert Open Studios, the very first one for the Coachella Valley, with over 66 artists opening up their studios with a kind of a self-guided driving tour. We will be attending, but we won't be able to show you anything because we will not be doing the show next Monday.
Why?
Alan and I are taking off to celebrate our anniversary, but we'll probably get some sound bites and we'll show you some of what it was the following week.
Well, you both deserve some time off with a piano bar on Wednesday and us on Monday. Oh my gosh, we're busy, busy, busy.
And my hardest working man in show business, producer husband, our producer, my husband, Alan.
That's right.
He really deserves it.
Well, you two have a great weekend and a happy early anniversary to both of you.
Thanks, Conrad.
Right, see you later.
Bye, everybody.
I don't really know her destination, but I got a feeling I'm gonna be her passenger. So gonna let me be your passenger. Yeah. Said I like the way you sell your shit now.